The Last of Us Season 2, a TV show that has everybody talking about it right now for a multitude of different reasons. This particular TV show has now been started to get review bombed, supposedly, according to the mainstream media, and we're going to get into that later in this video. But The Last of Us Season 2 is getting backlash for a multitude of reasons. This is a TV show that has decided that it is going to, in fact, not only just follow what the games did, which was already a controversial decision at its own time, but now it was going to add in a couple of other things into the TV show, like gender ideology, for example, or even throwing in nonsense about how Ellie's apparently going to become a dad. Yes, this is some of the biggest things that people are arguing about. But ultimately, from the alleged review bombing to the overall media gaslighting and the ever-growing disconnect between Hollywood and its audience, there is ultimately a lot to unpack when it comes to The Last of Us Season 2. But more than that, we're going to take a look at the state of modern entertainment as a whole and ask the real question that nobody seems to be asking or wanting an answer for that matter in Hollywood, which is, what if people just don't like your product anymore? Is it a review bomb, or do people simply just don't like it? So shout out to the 85,600 legends that are watching this video right now. And if you are not subscribed, if you are part of the 44% that are not subscribed to this channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. So let's get into the elephant in the room, which is the backlash about The Last of Us Season 2. So after episode 2 aired, review sites and social media went on fire. Obviously, everybody knows this, right? And it almost seems as if it's all planned. Everybody sees how all these articles come out the moment a controversial TV show airs. It's not even an hour or two after it airs, and suddenly everybody had them ready. It makes you wonder as if they all start planning this beforehand. But again, the social media websites went on fire, but not in the way that HBO probably hoped that it would. Negative user scores started pouring in like crazy, and like clockwork, mainstream media outlets decided to circle the wagon and say, hey, this is review bombing, this is misogynistic trolls, this is bigots who can't handle storytelling that are very complex, right? They came out with every single excuse that they possibly can as to why people didn't like this particular episode or why people weren't liking this particular season. The simple fact of the matter is that people aren't allowed to not like something without getting called bigots, without getting called racist, without getting called misogynist. But Hollywood and the entertainment industry as a whole, because we have the same issues happening in gaming right now, they all seem to have forgotten that this could be a potential truth, right? You cannot like something and also not be a racist. You cannot like something and not be a misogynist. But to these people who love to fail upwards and who never want to take accountability for literally anything that they do, it's easy for them to just blame those things, because that way they can place you into a bubble that they like to keep you in. It's the same script that we've seen time and time again. But did any of them stop to consider that maybe, just maybe, this show isn't really that good, or just maybe the episode that aired, perhaps a lot of people did not like it, perhaps it didn't resonate with a lot of people, right? The simple fact is The Last of Us Season 2 has a lot of people who are watching the TV show who have never played the video games before, and ironically, the decisions that were made in the video games are also decisions that were hated in the TV show. Shocking, right? It's almost as if people just didn't like the creative decisions that were made in The Last of Us Part 2, because that's what Season 2 was made off of. But again, there's a growing pattern in entertainment media where literally any negative reception to a politically charged or identity-driven show or episode is immediately going to be dismissed as hate. There's no engagement with the critiques whatsoever. There's no self-reflection on why people might be saying those things. They just blame the audience and move on, and that is simply not analysis. That's just propaganda. So then you have Hollywood of today, where they just seem literally incapable of taking an L. Hollywood has taken so many L's over the last, I don't even know how long now, between the MCU failures and between all the box office bombs over at the DCU, everything that's been happening in Disney, they have taken L after L after L, and yet it just seems as if they don't want to ever acknowledge it. When a project underperforms, whether it's a movie, a show, a reboot, or whatever, they double down and blame the fans. They say it's your fault for not getting it. You know, that whole media literacy thing. They say it's your fault for not being open-minded enough because, you know, you're just a bigot. The denial is basically toxic, right? We have an environment of toxic positivity, which is stifling creativity. What we're watching isn't just a bad season of a once promising show for a lot of people, because a lot of people actually enjoyed the first season of The Last of Us, even though the particular episode, you know, that everybody likes to talk about, the big gay episode, had a lot of hatred around it because they basically changed a lot of the story that happened in the video game to make a, let's just call it, very, very toxic relationship between two men into this massive big gay love story of true love, which never happened, right? So anyway, what ends up happening is that people are not liking the TV show based off what they used to like before, and we're watching the entertainment industry eat itself alive. There is just no humility left whatsoever, no interest in learning what the audiences actually want, and it's just a bunch of elite assholes that are patting themselves on the back for being supposedly brave, while viewers check out in droves, and then they lead the viewership down worse and worse. But Hollywood used to tell great stories, you know. Now it basically tells you how to think and calls you names if you disagree. It really is kind of sad at the end of the day. You know, these people don't ever want to admit that there's other people out there that do not have the same sentiment as them. They do not have the same mindset as them. There's a lot of people out there that genuinely think different from them. And it's funny because, again, I keep going back to the initial Last of Us 2 video game. The decisions that were made by Neil Druckmann with The Last of Us Part 2 are resonating with The Last of Us Season 2. The same decisions that people hated back then are the same decisions that people hate now. And it's funny because the people that hate it now never even knew about the decisions that were made in the game in the first place because they never played it. So let's talk about now the show's lead. We got Bella Ramsey. So Bella Ramsey is the actress that actually plays Ellie. And since season 1, Ramsey has obviously been very public about her gender identity, referring to herself as non-binary and using both she and they pronouns or whatever the case may be. The identity is now overshadowing the performance. You have critics in media that are so obsessed with her identity that they don't even talk about her actual acting as Ellie. They only talk about what her identity can bring to the character of Ellie. It actually is kind of sad. They refuse to acknowledge legitimate concerns about her overall portrayal as Ellie and are so focused on her pronouns. Is she good in the role? The question is almost too bad to ask. Nobody even asked that question. And then that's the problem. Identity is not a shield from criticism. A performance should stand on its own merits, and you're allowed to say that this isn't what I pictured for Ellie without being labeled as a transphobe or phobe in general, or I don't know, racist. I really don't know, misogynist. There are so many names out there that they call you the moment you give any kind of criticism, and it's a bit ridiculous. Then we have Pedro Pascal. Oh man, Pedro Pascal, Mr. Femboy himself. He was once a beloved figure, believe it or not, in fandoms like The Mandalorian and the Game of Thrones. Pascal has increasingly turned his public persona into a political platform, which is so ironic, by the way, because Gina Carano got fired for merely mentioning anything political. Then he posted inflammatory messages on social media, publicly supported controversial causes, and often uses interviews to make political statements rather than talk about his work. And here's the reason why, okay? The reason why he does that is because that is how he maintains his job. That is how he actually keeps getting more and more work. Have you guys noticed that Pedro Pascal is literally everywhere? The guy is everywhere in Hollywood, and it is because, quite frankly, the man says the right thing. He does the right thing. He does whatever he is told, and he never questions it. And that is the reason why he keeps getting roles. So anytime he gets an interview opportunity, he is going to try to maintain what has given him the opportunities in the first place, and that is making politically charged statements. But again, free speech is a right, sure, whatever, he's fine to say whatever he wants to say, but audiences are getting tired of being preached at, which again, they have a right to be tired of that as well. Actors today forget that fans have fallen in love with the characters, not the actual political talking points of the actor playing the character. Pascal is no longer seen as Joel anymore. He's seen as the guy who called people Nazis on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like, it's so ridiculous that this man seems to forget that, yes, obviously your thoughts are your own, which I'm so tired of them putting that in their Twitter bios. My thoughts are my own, as if that's going to separate you from what you do publicly in terms of your company or the character that you're portraying on screen. But again, that's neither here nor there. Mr. My thoughts is my own. Yeah, at the end of the day, people watching you play Joel and then remembering, oh, this is the guy who thinks I'm a Nazi. Yeah, clearly that's going to be a problem. And then when actors begin to blur the line between performance and activism, they essentially end up risking alienating half of their audience before the show even starts. Now, here's the thing. The Last of Us Season 2 has the namesake, obviously, of The Last of Us, which is huge. There is going to be a built-in audience immediately simply because of the video games. There is going to be a built-in audience because of how big the name actually is. Even though The Last of Us Part 2 was a failure overall compared to the first one, it is still a game that has a lot of people that know about it, and that is going to allow a built-in fan base to be basically utilized for this particular season. And then coupled with the fact that you had a lot of normies discover The Last of Us from the first season, and you end up with a situation where you have a really good start for a season 2. The Last of Us season 2 actually opened pretty well. I believe it opened bigger than the first season, but then viewership started to drop little by little, especially after episode 2, which we're going to get into. So let's talk about the reception of what happened after episode 2. Social media was a war zone. It was on fire. Fans who voiced any criticism were immediately attacked and dogpiled. Forums like Reddit were locked or heavily moderated. What else is new, right? Reddit is a place where if you go there and you try to talk about a piece of entertainment that has any sort of leftist ideology to it and you talk bad about it, you might as well guarantee that it's going to be locked down. You know, they're the kind of place where they want to be toxically positive. They don't want any sort of criticism, negativity whatsoever. It's got to be positive and only positive. But in any case, it was heavily moderated, and obviously comment sections were filled with bots or curated positive vibes only posts, and yet you cannot hide the numbers. Engagement dropped overall after episode 2 big time. Viewer retention dipped completely. Discussions that once dominated the internet now feel artificially inflated, manufactured almost, to make it seem like there's more excitement than there is. But keep in mind, there has been multiple iterations, and shout out to Master the TDS, who has caught companies utilizing bots over on X in order to fake boost engagement to make it seem like people are actually more interested than they are. The conversation almost feels fake in a way because people are too scared to be honest, but that's the beautiful thing about YouTube. We can talk our voice, put it out there, and people can resonate with it or not. And chances are, people usually resonate more with an honest take versus a take that's just going to, you know, give into their beliefs and do this whole toxic positivity nonsense. So when honesty is punished, people are going to walk away, and whether they tell you or not, and they do it silently, that's up to them. But trust me that there are people that are walking away from this TV show and they're doing it without saying a peep. There are people that are walking away silently. It also happened to Doctor Who, by the way. So then The Last of Us season 2, again, this is just a symptom of a much bigger problem. The disease is much bigger, as people like to say. Hollywood is collapsing essentially under its own ego. Writers, actors, executives, all people are more interested in lecturing more than entertaining, and they're replacing compelling characters with ultimately just checkboxes, right? They're rewriting beloved franchises with contempt for the source material and the fans. I don't understand why in Hollywood it seems to be a thing where they don't want you to know the source material, understand the source material, or if it's a video game, play the source material. They'll tell you flat out, do not play the video games. They'll tell you flat out, do not read the comic books. They will tell you flat out to be ignorant to whatever you are portraying on screen. They don't want you to read it. They don't want you to know it. They don't want you to understand it, because here's why. They know that that content is good. They know that the script and the writing that is in those comic books, that is in those older video games, they know that it is really good for the most part, and they don't want you to have a preconceived notion as an actor. They don't want you to become a fan. That's the problem, because they know that fans are a lot harder to convince to do dumb stuff with that particular IP. They rather keep you ignorant, and they rather keep you stupid. So that's why they tell people, do not read the original source material. If you are going to work on this project, you are not allowed to do that. We've seen Marvel nosedive completely to Disney's just endless failures. The pattern is pretty clear. People are done being told with what to like. They want good stories. You know, they want relatable characters, escapism, not homework assignments wrapped up in beautiful CGI. Although, to be fair, the CGI really hasn't been beautiful lately. Have you seen some of the latest Marvel movies? Not exactly the greatest. But until the industry essentially accepts this, it's just going to keep getting worse. That's just how it goes. You know, things get worse before they get better. So ultimately, this leads us to here, where we have an article, for example, and keep in mind, there is many articles like this out there, but I'm just going to use this one for the overall point because they basically all copy and paste each other. But we have an article from GameSpot with a headline that reads, "The Last of Us Season 2 is now being review bombed," because of course it is. The latest episode is taking the biggest hit from user reviews, right? This person says HBO's The Last of Us became quickly a pop culture phenomenon, introducing the fungi-controlled world of a bleak future to the masses, many of whom never played the game. The series filled the void left by Game of Thrones and became event television. After 2 years, the series returned with shocking moments and rating highs, but another trend returned that has become all too common in fandom, and that has to do with review bombing. Over on the sister site Metacritic, season 2 has earned a must-watch badge and universal acclaim with a user score of 81, with reviews from over 42 established critics. On the flip side, the user score sank the show to a generally unfavorable status, with 542 user ratings and 61% of them voting a 0 or a 1. The thing is, almost all of those reviews contain no actual critique and are still complaining about woke culture and asking, can we just have straight characters? There is nothing of nuance or value. And see, the thing is, there's never going to be any nuance or value when you are putting content out there that has no nuance or value, right? So if you are pushing LGBTQ propaganda, because there's a difference between a gay character that's a good character that happens to be gay versus a character that is just purely there to be propaganda. And keep in mind, this is the same reason why people attacked The Last of Us Part 2, the video game. Aside from Joel's death, Ellie and Dina's relationship was always very questionable at the end of the day, and what you guys decided to do was make it even more questionable. You decided to go above and beyond by putting in this absolutely cringe line of, I'm gonna be a dad, from Ellie, somebody who's like 4'8" with eyes that have separate zip codes, and this particular person that is like nowhere near a man, and you're saying, I'm gonna be a dad. So surely you must have thought to yourself that this politically charged content would have some politically charged responses. But of course you guys know this, right? You obviously know this. You are choosing to pretend to be nuanced and pretend to be valued and all this nonsense when you guys are anything but that. You knew exactly what you were doing by making Ellie say that line, and you knew exactly the kind of response that you were going to get from people. People have a right to not like something without being labeled bigots or review bombers or anything under the sun. People didn't like the episode, and they have every right to not like the episode. And again, this particular article goes into the recap, obviously, of what happened in that episode, and they try to gaslight people into essentially thinking that it's the fans' fault for not liking it, that the fans are the problem, right? They're always the problem. The fans are amazing when they're voting positively for everything, but the fans are suddenly a problem when they're expressing their disdain for something. You know what I mean? Like, this is seriously the biggest issue with entertainment and Hollywood as a whole. They will never accept that, hey, maybe you just made a bad decision, or perhaps you just didn't get your point across the way you thought. Maybe try to do better next time. No, we can't do that because we're always right. We're Hollywood. It's impossible for us to be wrong. So let me know what you guys think ultimately in the comments down below. Is The Last of Us Season 2 being unfairly review bombed, or is this just another overhyped, underdelivered piece of Hollywood ideological puzzle nonsense? Let me know in the comments down below, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Shout out to the Bigot Army members. I appreciate you guys so much for helping support the channel in the way that you do. If you're not a member, consider hitting that join button to get your name on the list as we scroll through the credits, and I will see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.